In our headlines on this Monday, December 22nd, here in South Korea. The final phase of the presidential office's return to Cheong Wa Dae is underway as we speak. In fact, the Presidential Press Corps has already set up camp at the Blue House. Meanwhile, the opposition People Power Party launches a filibuster today as the ruling Democratic Party pushes to pass a bill that seeks to set up a special tribunal dedicated to insurrection and treason charges. Wireless telecommunications operator SK Telecom is ordered to offer 100,000 won worth of cash points and bill discounts each to those affected by the hacking incident earlier this year. The presidential office is returning to Cheong Wa Dae from Yongsan, where it relocated to over 3 years ago. Our presidential office correspondent Song Yoo-jin takes a look at the move and more.
For the first time in years, cameras are getting a rare look inside the Yongsan presidential office, where workers are moving wrapped furniture out of the building. The destination? Cheong Wa Dae, also known as the Blue House. After more than 3.5 years, South Korea's top office is heading back to its former home, just behind Gyeongbokgung Palace in downtown Seoul.
The presidential office will now leave the Yongsan era behind and return to the Blue House, the place where the president originally was and belongs.
Returning to Cheong Wa Dae was one of President Lee's key campaign pledges.
청와대를 신속하게 좀 보수해서 그대로 다시 들어가는 게 제일 좋겠다.
He has argued that the compound is better equipped with established security, protocol, and diplomatic infrastructure, making it more cost-efficient and operationally effective. The previous Yoon Suk-yeol administration relocated the presidential office to the Defense Ministry compound in 2022, saying that Cheong Wa Dae symbolized an overly centralized imperial presidency distant from the public. Since August, Cheong Wa Dae has been closed to visitors, so it could undergo renovation work in preparation for the return. So what will the revived presidential compound look like? The layout itself remains largely unchanged. The main building houses the president's office and reception rooms. Yeomingwan buildings 1 through 3 serve as offices for his aides. There is also the Yeongbingwan State Guest House, the Chunchugwan Press Center, and the presidential residence. What will change is how the space is used. President Lee plans to work primarily from Yeomingwan rather than the main building to streamline communication and decision-making. The presidential residence, however, will not be used immediately as additional refurbishment is required. Most of the relocation is expected to be completed around Christmas, with President Lee likely to begin officially commuting to Cheong Wa Dae from his current residence in Hannam-dong toward the end of the year.
The Lee administration says that moving back to the Blue House will not mean a return to its old image, which was often criticized as closed and authoritarian. Officials say they plan to expand online live streams of President Lee's official engagements, as well as minimize security restrictions around the area. And while access will be limited, the administration plans to reopen Cheong Wa Dae to visitors next year. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, at the National Assembly, the opposition People Power Party has launched a filibuster as the ruling Democratic Party pushes to pass a bill that seeks to set up a special tribunal dedicated to insurrection charges. Our Kim Do-yeon covers this latest dispute.
Tabled at last, the ruling Democratic Party introduced to the floor of the National Assembly on Monday a contentious bill to create a special tribunal for insurrection to deal with issues arising from the prosecution of former President Yoon Suk-yeol and his aides for their failed martial law bid. However, proceedings are stalled as the main opposition People Power Party has launched a filibuster to block its passage. The Democratic Party is adamant on passing the legislation to thoroughly punish those involved in the martial law declaration. They argue the current judicial leadership, specifically Supreme Court Chief Justice Cho Hee-dae, is biased, necessitating a special structure to ensure fair accountability. However, there were concerns over the bill's constitutionality when the idea was promulgated, but the DP claims that they have been resolved.
Discussing the future without clearing up the insurrection is like building a sandcastle. This revised bill removes unconstitutionality and danger. Above all, its strength lies in blocking the influence of Supreme Court Chief Justice Cheong Wa Dae as much as possible.
Under the revised bill, dedicated panels will be established at the Seoul Central District Court and Seoul High Court. To ensure the Chief Justice cannot intervene, the revision empowers a meeting of judges at each court to determine the tribunal's composition rather than court leadership. The bill also includes a grandfather clause allowing the former president's ongoing trial to remain with his current bench for the first ruling. The People Power Party immediately began a filibuster, condemning the move as an anti-constitutional attempt to judge shop and seize control of the judiciary.
This is where impeachment motions passed 3 times and the lifting of martial law passed. But what is happening now? The Assembly is denying the very Constitution it created and is attempting to unilaterally pass unconstitutional bills.
The Democratic Party has already moved to terminate the filibuster, ensuring the debate concludes Tuesday morning. With the party's supermajority, the bill is effectively guaranteed to pass immediately thereafter. Enactment appears certain as well, with President Lee Jae-myung having already signaled his support for the special tribunal. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Separately, the Democratic Party on Monday agreed to a special counsel probe into allegations that the Unification Church bribed lawmakers across the aisle. The ruling party pledged a probe that leaves no stone unturned, calling for a sweeping review of the church's reported involvement in politics, including illegal donations and influence peddling linked to the 2022 presidential election. The People Power Party has welcomed the latest development and proposed follow-up talks, while warning that the probe must not serve as political retaliation. The presidential office, for its part, urged for an impartial probe into allegations, regardless of political affiliation or status. In other news, the costly ramifications of a weaker South Korean currency are becoming tangible for ordinary consumers here of products like beef and coffee. Our economics correspondent Park Chun-han explains.
The effects of the weakening Korean won are beginning to show in the costs of imports, as while year-on-year import prices fell by more than 2% on a contractual currency basis, they rose by over 2% when calculated in Korean won. According to the Bank of Korea Economic Statistics System on Sunday, the import price index for November shows that, with 2020 set as 100, import prices on a contractual currency basis rose by just over 18% as of November 2025. However, when those same price changes are converted into Korean won, the increase jumps to nearly 42%. This widening gap highlights how exchange rate movements add pressure to Korea's import costs. When looking at the $1 exchange rate, the amount of won needed to buy $1 now stands at around 1,481. That marks an increase of 7.63% over the past 6 months and a rise of 34.3% over the past 5 years. South Korea imports nearly 100% of key staples such as coffee, corn, wheat, and soybeans, making it vulnerable to currency fluctuations. Notably, the import price index for coffee stood at 379.71 in won terms last month, compared with 307.12 in dollar terms, underscoring how the weak won amplifies costs. Over the past 5 years, dollar-based coffee prices have tripled due to climate-driven supply shortages, but in won terms, they have nearly quadrupled, rising nearly 280% since 2020. Beef has also risen by over 60% in the same period, compared to an increase of around 30% on a contractual currency basis.
Even when buying the same amount, imports inevitably cost more when the exchange rate rises, pushing up import prices and ultimately fueling inflation. Compared with other G7 countries, South Korea is more sensitive to exchange rate swings and raw material price increases due to its heavy reliance on imports.
Meanwhile, the Bank of Korea's analysis shows that if the $1 rate persists around the 1,471 level, inflation could exceed its 2.1% forecast and rise to the mid-2% range. Park Chun-han, Arirang News.
And on the trade front, exports during the first 20 days of December rose 6.8% on year. According to the Korea Customs Service, shipments overseas totaled $43 billion, driven by semiconductors. This amount is the highest ever for a 20-day period, surpassing the previous record of $40.3 billion set last year. Average daily exports increased 3.6% to slightly over $2.6 billion, and shipments of semiconductors jumped 41.8%. Meanwhile, imports gained 0.7% on year, resulting in a trade surplus of $3.8 billion. On the diplomatic front, sources say officials from South Korea and Russia met in Moscow for North Korea-related talks. The Foreign Ministry here has declined to confirm the meeting, and the Foreign Ministry in Russia has denied the communication altogether. Our Kim Bo-kyung reports.
South Korea and Russia reportedly held closed-door talks in Moscow recently, tapping on North Korea-related issues. According to sources on Sunday, a South Korean ministry official in charge of dealing with the North's nuclear issues made a secret visit to Moscow, where they met with their Russian counterparts in charge of related matters, including Oleg Burmistrov, Russia's special envoy for North Korea nuclear issues. Their meeting follows a September meeting in New York between the two countries' top diplomats, South Korean Foreign Minister Cho Hyun and his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov. Reports say Seoul could have asked Moscow to play a constructive role in ensuring peace on the Korean peninsula, given Russia's close ties with the regime. One expert, however, says Russia's stance on the regime's nuclear issues is quite firm and it would be hard to change.
Russia realistically believes North Korea's nuclear weapons do exist, and that is something that must be acknowledged. From Moscow's view, the North Korea nuclear issue should be recognized as a reality first before moving on to the next step. Otherwise, it is impossible to continue with dialogue.
In fact, Russia has denied that there were any secret talks between Seoul and Moscow. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova said in a statement that the opponents of Russia-North Korea cooperation have not abandoned futile attempts to undermine their strategic partnership. She further added that Russia was not holding any consultations with South Korea, nor discussed matters affecting inter-Korean relations, particularly North Korea nuclear issues, which she claimed do not exist for Russia. Given that the communication between the two countries has remained frozen for some time, the expert noted that undisclosed talks between Seoul and Moscow may be considered a step forward. Yet how the two sides will address North Korea issues remains to be seen. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
South Korean wireless telecommunications operator SK Telecom has been ordered to offer 100,000 won worth of cash points and bill discounts each to those who have been affected by the hacking incident earlier this year. Our Moon Hye-ryun reports.
South Korea's Consumer Protection Agency has issued a ruling over a major SK Telecom data breach that exposed the SIM card information of 23 million subscribers last April, which triggered widespread disruption as users replaced SIMs. The Consumer Dispute Mediation Committee under the Korea Consumer Agency ruled that personal data had been leaked and that consumer harm had occurred, determining that SK Telecom bears responsibility for compensation. The ruling follows a collective mediation request filed in May by 58 affected subscribers. After 3 rounds of deliberations, the committee approved a compensation proposal worth 100,000 Korean won, just under $68 per person. Compensation will not be paid in cash. Instead, if the compensation plan goes ahead, subscribers will receive a discount of about $30 on mobile service fees, along with an equal amount in points usable at affiliated partner stores, including convenience stores and bakeries. The committee added that SK Telecom's previously offered 50% discount on August mobile service fees will be deducted from the total compensation amount. It also emphasized that the ruling does not constitute a legal determination of liability under privacy laws, but is aimed at prioritizing swift consumer relief following the data breach. If SK Telecom accepts the mediation proposal, it will carry the same legal effect as a court settlement. The company has 15 days from receiving the decision to notify the committee whether it will accept the terms. The committee has also stated that, if accepted, the compensation plan would apply to not only the 58 applicants, but to all 23 million subscribers affected by the data leak. If fully implemented, the total compensation could reach above $1.5 billion. SK Telecom said it will carefully review the decision before making a final determination. The company has already taken follow-up measures, including SIM replacements for all subscribers and a separate customer compensation package, and was fined more than $91 million by the Personal Information Protection Commission. With the mediation ruling potentially adding another trillion won level financial burden, SK Telecom's decision is being closely watched. 문혜련, 아리랑 뉴스.
Over in the U.S., dispute over transparency continues to mount with regard to the disclosure of files related to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Our Lee Seung-jae has details.
At least 16 files have disappeared from the U.S. Justice Department's public webpage containing documents related to Jeffrey Epstein less than 24 hours after they were posted, with no explanation from the government and no public notice. The missing files were available on Friday but were no longer accessible by Saturday. They included several images, among them paintings depicting nude women and a photograph showing a series of images arranged along a credenza and inside drawers. One of those images showed a photograph of Donald Trump alongside Epstein, Melania Trump, and Epstein's longtime associate Ghislaine Maxwell. The unexplained removal of the files has fueled speculation online over what was taken down and why the public was not notified, intensifying long-standing scrutiny surrounding Epstein and his connections to powerful figures. Democrats on the House Oversight Committee highlighted the missing image featuring Trump in a post on X, calling for greater transparency. Tens of thousands of pages were made public Friday, but critics say the material offered little new insight into Epstein's crimes or the prosecutorial decisions that allowed him to avoid serious federal charges for years. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche on Sunday defended the limited release, saying the department was required to balance transparency with the need to protect survivors of sexual abuse. Speaking on NBC's Meet the Press, Blanche said continued document review was necessary to prevent harm to victims.
And so we learned after releasing that photograph that there were concerns about those women and the fact that we had put that photo up. So we pulled that photo down. It has nothing to do with President Trump. There are dozens of photos of President Trump already released to the public, seeing him with Mr. Epstein.
He said the Trump administration remains committed to meeting its legal obligations to release the files, but emphasized that the process would take time. For now, the unexplained disappearance of the documents has only intensified calls for clarity, accountability, and fuller disclosure in a case that continues to raise questions years after Epstein's death. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
On the space front, South Korea's first commercial orbital rocket, the Hanbit Nano, will lift off from Brazil this week following 3 delays owing to mechanical issues. The rocket will be launched from the Alcantara Space Center in Brazil at 3:45 p.m. Monday local time. That will be 3:45 a.m. Tuesday, Korea Standard Time. Now, there is concern that the weather may be a variable this time around as rain is in the forecast. The mission, called Spaceward, aims to place 8 payloads into orbit, including 5 small satellites from Brazil and India and 3 experimental devices. And South Korea has made public its blueprint for Mars exploration, which will reportedly take place in phases over a 2-decade time frame. Our Cha Yun-kyung has more.
The Korea Aerospace Administration has revealed its mid to long-term Mars exploration roadmap spanning 20 years through 2045. Rather than attempting a single, all-at-once mission to Mars, this roadmap focuses on gradually accumulating technology step-by-step from orbital insertion to landing and surface exploration using domestically developed capabilities. As an initial step, plans are underway to launch a Mars orbiter using the Nuri rocket and next-generation launch systems. In addition, technologies for exploring and utilizing resources on Mars will be developed, along with energy supply systems and the technologies needed to support crewed exploration and the establishment of habitation infrastructure.
At the end of last November, the first space transportation capability, developed in cooperation with the private sector, was secured.
However, since significant gaps still remain between Korea and leading countries in terms of technology, budget, and manpower, international cooperation is essential. Accordingly, the plan is to take part in international exploration projects in order to demonstrate domestic technologies at an early stage and contribute to global missions. Through these efforts, the goal is to secure a Mars orbiter by the mid-2030s and to complete landing and robotic exploration missions around 2045. Mars is rapidly emerging as a central arena in the competition for space leadership. Through KASA's Mars roadmap, South Korea aims to rise into the ranks of the world's top 5 space powers. 차윤경, 아리랑 뉴스.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. The United States says recent talks with Ukraine and European partners on ending the war with Russia were productive and constructive. White House envoy Steve Witkoff met with Ukrainian and European representatives in Florida to align on a shared strategic approach. Simultaneously, Kremlin envoy Kirill Dmitriev held discussions with U.S. officials in Miami, describing the negotiations as constructive. While President Zelensky noted that diplomatic efforts are moving quickly, the Kremlin denied that there were any preparations for formal three-way talks involving the U.S., Russia, and Ukraine. In South Africa, a mass shooting at a township pub near Johannesburg has killed 9 people and wounded at least 10 others. Police say multiple gunmen arrived in vehicles and began shooting patrons just before 1 a.m. Sunday local time in Berkesdale, west of Johannesburg, before fleeing the scene. Authorities confirmed the attackers used an assault rifle and handguns, and that some victims were shot randomly in nearby streets. The motive still remains unknown, and police have launched a manhunt. The shooting comes amid growing concern over rising gun violence across the country. Israel has approved 19 new Jewish settlements in the occupied West Bank, a move that raises tensions over the future of a Palestinian state. The cabinet's decision on Sunday increases the total number of settlements in the West Bank to more than 200, marking a record expansion under Israel's current far-right government. The move comes as the U.S. pushes for a Gaza ceasefire plan that includes a pathway to Palestinian statehood, an outcome these settlements are designed to prevent. International law widely considers these settlements as illegal. A muddy eruption burst from Black Diamond Pool in Yellowstone National Park, sending debris into the air as cameras captured the rare event. U.S. Geological Survey scientists say the eruption occurred Saturday morning in Biscuit Basin, an area previously damaged by a hydrothermal explosion last year. Researchers say new monitoring equipment is now helping track these unpredictable geothermal eruptions. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
Today marks Dongji, the winter solstice, where we have the longest night of the year. Cold winds strengthened overnight, and some areas of the Gyeongsang-do provinces were under a cold wave advisory this morning. Despite the cold start, temperature rose to 4 degrees in Seoul during the day, slightly above the average for this time of year. Rain is in the forecast for many areas tomorrow and Wednesday. Showers will begin tomorrow afternoon in the central parts of the country, the Jeollado provinces, and Jeju Island, then spread nationwide by nighttime. Most of this rain will stop by Wednesday morning, which is Christmas Eve. Tomorrow morning, Seoul will start off at -1 degree, Daejeon and Gyeongju at -2 degrees. Daily highs will rise up to 6 degrees in Seoul, 15 degrees in Busan. On Thursday, Christmas Day, some rain or snow is possible along the west coast of the Jeollado provinces. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at the hour here in South Korea. As always, thank you for watching.